Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome on this November 4th to our next Statutory Advisory Board meeting. It is being recorded and it'll be available to the public through the channels through the Mass Commission for the Blind. Welcome everybody from the public as well and board members that are here. And we'll get right into the first agenda item, which is we do have a quorum, so we'll vote to accept the minutes from the October 7th board meeting. Do I have a motion from Blair or Kathy?
I'll make that motion, Brian. This is Blair.
Thank you. And a second?
Do you want me to second that?
I do.
I'll second that. I'll second that motion.
All right. All in favor, aye.
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 Motion passed. And so we're on to the commissioner's report.
Minutes were very well done too. I don't know who writes them, but
Yeah, it was really well done.
yeah.
John, you're up.
Moving right along.
Really? Wow. Nancy's just getting here. All right. All right. Very good. I was catching up on some things here and all right. So it's still a lot of uncertainty and a lot of issues are going on. Most of you have seen some of the SNAP issues going on. Folks have not received their funding. Last I heard, it was approximately somewhere around 4,000 MCB consumers who receive some form of food stamps. Some receive the minimum because they get SSI, and so they receive the minimum. Others have a family and receive more. But the food pantries seem to be well stocked. Hopefully, the emergency funding will be in place. I've heard several stories. Some people say it'll be 2 days after Wednesday. I've heard others that can say it can be as many as 5 days after Wednesday, so taking it probably into next week, taking away the weekend. Hopefully, we did send out a spreadsheet. Nate and his team had been working on a resources spreadsheet of all the different resources that are available in different regions related to resources in the community. And we had food pantries in that list of resources. So we sent it out to all the directors in case folks call and need to know where the nearest food pantry is. If they reach out to the director or to the social worker, then they should be able to get that information and get help doing that. Also, I'm sure other town resources would know where the food pantry is if they are not familiar with. They seem to be pretty well stocked. Generous public donations have been coming in, so it's been real good for the pantries to get a lot of those resources and extra funding, and so we'll help out folks in emergencies as they can. So, but hopefully this will be over next week. I do say hopefully because I really don't have any idea, but it looks like since we have hit the 35th day, which ties the longest shutdown, the last one that was this length was in 2019, and it was under the same president. So they're used to this, and will hopefully they'll get bored with it. I'm reading some notes from the lobbyists in Washington that are sort of implying that they're looking for what they're calling an off-ramp. So trying to come up with some mutual type of understanding that they can agree on. typically the November 21st is the typical end date for the continuing resolution. Now, that's if it was put in place in October. If they get this settled and we're into next week, going from wherever they settle this to November 21st, it's not going to give them much time to work out the rest of the budget. So in a continuing resolution, the agency would receive a portion of the federal funds that were due to it this month. They usually roll it out in three payments throughout the year. So we would have gotten their first amount of money from the grants in late October, early November. So we don't have that. So they have to put that continuing resolution in place. And I'm hearing dates of late December or January now that the continuing resolution would carry through. And so that means we would get a portion of money once that resolution is put into place. So let's hope this all gets resolved, that the Congress gets to work and comes up with a reasonable, at least continuing resolution to get things moving towards resolving the whole budget issue. The situation here financially, MCB is fine. Carefully, we're anticipating this and had been managing our money in a way that we are all set through the end of the year. So we have had no changes in services or changes in any personnel issues. Everything is running smooth as far as financing the agency with the funds that we have currently on hand. So we're currently using the remainder of the fiscal year 25 funds that we had, and we're using the state funds that we received in July. So we're using those state funds to meet the match that we need to meet when we start getting the financial the money for fiscal year 26. So we're working on meeting that obligation. It's 21.5% of what the grant is that we're going to be receiving. It's the same amount every year. So so we're good. If we can get this situation squared away within a couple of weeks and get that resolution in place, then having that extra funding will carry us right in through February, so that they will have enough time to figure things out and get a budget for all of our programs. So lots of rumors in Washington regarding the Rehab Service Administration. I was on a call late last week. We had two individuals who are supposed to be connected in Washington were saying that they heard we were going to Health and Human Services. And there was a third individual who was also connected in Washington saying that they heard we were going to the Department of Labor. So in other words, nothing has been settled yet. The agency will, our Rehab Service Administration will go wherever it's moved to. They are our federal partner, and wherever they end up, then hopefully everything comes up to speed pretty quickly. Now, currently, all of their staff has been furloughed, and they have three or four people out of the 100 staff that are staying on and are doing essential duties. So although the government is shut down and the agency is on furlough, the deadlines that we have to meet are still in effect. We had to meet some filings, and we've submitted those on time. We have the what's called the 9/11 report coming up that's due later this month, but we're working to we'll get that filed on time. So by filing all the reports on time, it does generate certain systems to kick in. So by filing the fiscal reports that we were scheduled to file in October, we electronically received the go-ahead to continue using the remainder of the FY 25 funding. So all the agencies get that authorization to go ahead and continue to do that. And so that's, although the operation is on furlough, those individuals that are remaining on site are performing those financial duties that need to be performed. So, you know, I know you're hearing and seeing a lot in the news, but as far as services go, we're good. So let's try to ride it out together, and hopefully this will all be solved in the near future. I'll turn it over to Justine now, and she can give you some program updates and some personnel updates.
Thanks, John. Let's hope
you.
it does end soon. Good afternoon, Justine.
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. October was a very busy but a great month for programs and services. We hosted a variety of events, starting with our reverse virtual job fairs. We held these over 2 sessions, as we typically do. On day 1, we had 29 employers and 18 consumers participate as job seekers. Following that event, 4 employers reached out to connect with 6 consumers. And one of those consumers has already had an interview with a hiring manager and is awaiting next steps. So we're excited for that. On day 2, we had 30 employers and 16 consumers as job seekers. And following that session, there were 9 employer connections with 9 consumers or job seekers. Some have connected with multiple. So those conversations are ongoing, but we're really happy with how that went. And even for consumers who participated but may not obtain employment as a direct result of these fairs, or may not obtain it right away, the experience really still provides valuable opportunities to practice interviewing and to receive feedback and really strengthen their skills for future opportunities. So grateful for the team that worked on that and made it all happen. Next, we hosted our college information session for high school seniors and their families. We had 38 participants this year, which was nearly double last year's attendance, along with excellent presentations from our MCB staff. We had a panel of current college students, and they were amazing. That was really especially impactful. Such openness and insight about their experiences in college, what worked, what didn't work, everything in between. It really made the session very valuable. So I just want to extend our appreciation to them for taking the time to really inspire and help our future college students. We concluded the month with our White Cane Awareness Day celebration at the State House. That event brought together over 300 guests. It was a great turnout. Feedback that we've received has been very positive, with people describing it as an empowering day, very moving and really unifying. So those are exactly our goals for the event. We'll meet tomorrow as a committee to debrief that, but we were happy with how that went. And thank you to the Carroll Center for generously sponsoring the refreshments this year, and of course, for being such a strong partner in our work, and for TIC for broadcasting the event as well. WGBH wrote a nice article about the celebration. We have that up. We've reposted that on some of our social media channels, and we also have our own write-up on our MCB website and social media. So I will share both those links in the chat to the WBGH article as well as ours, if anyone's interested. Several of our partner programs have also officially kind of kicked off programs for this fall. Our PREETS programs, which are for students age 14 to 22, well underway with agencies such as LEAP, which is a program in Vermont, Perkins, the Polis Center, just to name a few. And our VR consumers are also participating in assessments and services with the Carroll Center, including programs such as workplace computing, with a high number of consumers participating in that right now, which is great. And then finally, on the staffing front, we've had a little bit of movement, a couple changes. We had a retirement of one of our OIB workers who covered regions 4 and 5. That position has been filled, and the new staff member started about two to 3 weeks ago. She brings a wealth of experience, and we're excited to have her on the team. We also had some movement within 2 of our other regions. A few months ago, our Region 4 SR supervisor position became vacant. The previous supervisor just left due to family matters and to spend more time with family. So that position has been filled by Carlene Boyd, who was previously an SR social worker in that region. So her former position has since been filled by an SR worker from Region 3 who requested a transfer. And now we have the Region 3 SR position open. So it's been posted and it's moving pretty quickly into the phone screening phase, I believe, this week. So our goal is to have that hire finalized by December, and then we'll be back to being fully staffed. And those are the updates that I have for you today, unless there's any questions.
Justine, I just have one, like, I'm impressed when you have an opening, even if maybe you had a lot of notice with the retirement one, but it seems like you're filling them pretty quickly. Are you having good luck with that? I know some are internal versus external.
Yes, the OIB position, which was due to the retirement, was completely external, and we have, thanks to Fouad, who's our HR liaison, he's really been able to facilitate a lot of the phone screens with our talent acquisition team at EHS, and they've been helpful, and things have been moving along pretty quickly. Absolutely.
That's good.
Mhm.
Good news.
And
Great.
Brian, can I bring up one more point?
Sure.
The earmarks, funding that Carroll Center and Mass Association for Blind and Visually Impaired were received have been cleared to move forward for funding. So urge all clients to phone has been ringing all morning. It's ringing now again. So I urge all clients to call either their worker here, but they can go directly and call the Carroll Center. We don't have to have an open case. The Carroll Center will give us a report at the end of the year, how many clients were served, and whatever information we need. So so funding has been is in the process and will be directed towards the vendors very shortly. Also, the radio reading services also will receive part of the funding. The rest of the funding will come later in the year. Typically, we do make those payments, those earmarks payments in 2, sometimes 3 portions, but I believe this year we'll be able to get them done in 2 payments. So it's great to hear that everything is moving forward and that our clients will be able to get the services they need and the technology services they need from our vendor partners, and also some housing assistance is also being provided in that grant this year. So if you are having housing issues, reach out to the workers here at MCB and we'll help you connect with those services over there. Only specific regions are involved in that, so reach out to the worker if anyone needs some housing assistance. And I think that's it for me. We do have a couple of new services we'll talk about next month that are coming out, but they're not available yet publicly. We have to do some contracting, so can't talk about those till we get the contract squared away.
Great. Thank you. Nate, are you ready?
I am. Good afternoon.
You
And
are.
Good night.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen. Not much of a difference, like I've been saying for the last few months, as we kind of get into this a little bit. If anybody wants to see, or me to kind of investigate any type of statistics other than what's on the dashboard, I'd be happy to. I know Blair had requested at one point, the average length of a VR case and how long they were with us and those type of things. We talked a little bit about that. So if anybody else has anything like that they're interested in, just please let me know and I can prepare and talk about it at a future meeting. So going into our dashboard, like I said, not a lot of big changes at all. We're still looking at close to 900 SR children cases open, 3,300 SR adult cases open, about 200 VR youth cases open, and 750 VR adult cases open. So pretty much along the same numbers we've had the last few months. Obviously a slight variance up and down. Closed cases so far for the calendar year for SR, we've had 2,040 SR closures, and we've had 92 children's case close. For VR, so this is since July 1st forward, we've had 51 successful VR closures and 34 non-successful. We currently have exactly 47 cases in employment status now, so waiting to hit that 90-day mark with those. Our demographics, and again, not any real changes in these as far as our VR age data and those age ranges. Registration information. We've had close to 7,300 certificates of blindness issued so far this year. We'll probably get close to that 9,000 mark, which will be our highest. We go up a little bit every year on those. MCB IDs, we're getting close to 1,000 new IDs issued this year. And so far, we've registered 1,531 people this year. So looking like we're going to hit that 1,800 mark again for registrations. It's where we've been kind of on normal years outside of COVID over the last 10 years. Any questions?
There's a question in the chat for you, Nate.
Okay, let me take a look. Thank you.
Do you track how many clients go from SR to VR or VR to SR?
We don't track those. I don't know if there's a way that I can track that, but we do have consumers that do either or for various reasons. SR cases to VR cases happen quite a bit. It's either a lot of times it's some folks that are aging that may have retired who started off as SR but decided they want to go back into the workforce. And so we would open them up in VR. And then sometimes with people that are in VR for some period of time might open up back in SR if they need some sort of service that isn't VR related later in their tenure with us. So it does happen. I can take a look and see if there's a way I can track that in our case management system and report back on that.
That question was from Dina at CCB.
Thanks, Dina. Yeah, well, I'll take a look at that and get back to you.
Any other questions for Nate?
Hi, Brian. It's Blair. I have a question for Justine. Hi, Justine.
Hi, Blair.
Can you give us the numbers about the number of high school students who participated in that event and how many college students were on the piano? I think that's such a wonderful idea. I know in my support group, because we're in the Worcester area, we have a lot of, well, not a lot, but maybe about 10 students who are visually impaired and attending colleges in the area. And it's great to keep them connected because they have similar experiences. They learn from one another. And I think that's just such a great session. Can you give us the numbers on that?
Sure. We had the panel this year, we had 3 students. We had a 4th who had confirmed, but had a day of cancellation. And we had actually invited, I believe it was up to 6, but we run this session from 3 to 5 p.m. and 3 of them had class ending at 3:30. We do the panel first. So in our debrief, we'll maybe talk about adjusting that perhaps next year if classes are a factor. But I was happy to see that they chose going to class over participating in our panel, I guess. But, so we did have 3 this year, and our overall numbers of participants was 38. So that included current high school seniors as well as some of their family members and some of our staff as well. So our vocational rehab counselors, for example, would also attended the session so that they were there to support their students who were on the meeting as well. So I can go back through and get the exact number of students who were there. If you're interested in that, I would guess it would be at least 15 to 20 of them were students.
Right. And how challenging is it, if at all, to have engagement with current college students participating in the panel? I think that's great.
It was great. It wasn't really a challenge to, we meet as a committee and we try to select the panelists who have slightly different college experiences. One, for example, started at community college and then is now at a 4-year school. Another one attends out of state, which is slightly a different experience. Another one attends in-state, private versus in-state public. So we try to have our panel members represent, just diversity in their experiences as well, because they certainly speak to that. So we were happy with the panel members that we had this year. Those 3, we filled a full hour, lots of questions from the guests that were on the call as well. We have a set number of questions that we start with, 8 or 9 questions that we generated as a committee, that some were provided by people when they registered. We ask if they have questions or topics that they'd like to see addressed. So then we generate questions, but we also leave time for additional questions. And it was a full hour of that. So
that's great. Within my group, we're really fortunate to have some students who use the white cane and some other students who have a guide dog, and just to hear their different experiences of learning to navigate a new campus. It's just wonderful to hear them share. Is there a network in MCB to connect college students across the regions?
I don't believe that there is currently. I mean, some of them who participate in our internship program, they would be connected through our soft skills training and some internship experiences, perhaps. And their vocational rehab counselors could certainly connect them, especially if they are. One panelist actually mentioned that the college that she goes to, there was another individual there who is blind, and she was able to connect with that person prior to starting college. So I think kind of as one-offs, we try to facilitate those connections and interactions, as much as we can. But in terms of a formal group or anything, that's not something that we have at this time.
Right. And I love how you include the family in these events. Obviously, it's a big step for the family to have a family member transition from high school to college, never mind one that is visually impaired. So great job. Thank you.
Okay.
Blair, this is Jonathan Gale. And just to answer part of what you were asking about connecting students, as you know, I'm the chairperson for the Region 5 Council. And
hello, Jonathan.
How are you? One of the things that we are looking at is reaching out to the colleges within Region 5, UMass, Dartmouth, Bristol Community, things like that, some of the others, as well, and giving them information about the commission, and also giving that specifically to their disability programs, and asking them to use that to connect their students who have visual impairment, not only potentially with one another, but with services and resources that the commission can provide.
That's great, Jonathan. What a wonderful idea.
Any other questions or comments?
Brian, this is Bruce Howell. I had a question for Justine too, if it's okay for me to ask.
Sure.
Justine, thank you. I don't mean to put you on the spot today, but I am curious, could you give me or tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that the college students revealed?
Sure. Some of them were, and I mean, we did record the session. It's on our YouTube. I'm happy to send that out to this group or send the link. You're welcome to watch it as well. And I think some of them talked about professors who maybe were less than willing at times to make accommodations, or that they, really just had to educate and advocate for themselves. And really, I think a lot of it was lack of understanding or lack of knowledge about why the student needed something the way that they did. They did talk about that. Sometimes they talked about some challenges with roommates, of course. I think that goes for everybody, and just kind of how they navigated that. Some students shared their experiences with utilizing disability services to request an accommodation for a single. Some students talked about having a single and then opting not to have a single for various reasons. So some of the panelists this year, two do have guide dogs. So they talked about that in terms of somewhat being a challenge, more in needing to educate people about, guide dogs in general, but then it also being really positive, because sometimes that could kind of stimulate some friendships and some discussions and some interactions, which was a positive ultimately. I think those were probably the main challenges, and they really focused on how they kind of overcame them. And something that came up this year that we did not hear in the past was one student really stressed connecting with the college campus security and public safety, which I thought was a great suggestion in terms of, if there's she's somewhere at night and needs a ride, you call public safety and they can provide that for you, for all students, and as just connecting with them so that they know what to do in case of an emergency. If there's ever the fire alarm that goes off at 2 a.m. in the dorms, very common. So just making that connection up front, the student talked about, which I thought was great too. So quick overview. They did a much better job, but I'm happy to share the link. I'll put it in the chat if you'd like to watch the whole session. They were great.
Great. No, thank you very much. I'm always curious, what we can do to help college, students be as prepared as possible when they experience this. And sometimes I worry that in the public school settings, a lot of this is given to them without them needing to be great self-advocates. So this is really helpful to hear. Thank you.
Everyone stressed that, really, that it's on the student. You need to be self-advocating. If it's a skill that you're not quite comfortable with at this point, now's the time to hone in and practice it, So everybody was great about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I don't see any hands.
I have a quick question, actually. I'm just wondering, I guess I have some questions regarding what MCB as an agency can advocate for and they can't. So last week, I attended a virtual Boston City Council hearing regarding autonomous vehicle. And I'm just wondering, because this is such an important mode of transportation that certainly organizations like the American Council of the Blind and the National Federation for the Blind have endorsed, and we know that so many of our members, blind and low vision, in those states that have autonomous vehicles are utilizing that technology for work, employment, healthcare and education. In the panel discussion when the hearing was happening, the Carroll Center, Greg Donnelly was there and was represented, and an O&M instructor spoke in favor of autonomous vehicles. And I'm just wondering, just as MCB has kind of embraced the glidance technology, I'm just wondering what MCB can do to support this kind of technology that can potentially, a real a game changer for our community, especially when there are those people who have guide dogs who are dealing with all of these ride refusals. It's really impacting them. And I'm just wondering where MCB can be a voice for our community with this kind of technology.
Hi, Nona. This is Nate. I participated. Well, we did a project at MCB a few years back that I led that looked into autonomous vehicles, and through that project we were able to really plug into a lot of the manufacturers that are developing them and trying to get them on the road. And I also sat on a panel to advocate for, in the development of autonomous vehicles, to think about people with disabilities, and specific people with visual impairments. And we talked, this was towards the end of COVID, it was a virtual panel, but there was over 3,000 people in the event.
Wow.
And we talked about the advantages of what autonomous vehicles can do for the population that we serve, and kind of the strides that they have made in developing that, and developing them in a way that would assist people with disabilities. The big issue with autonomous vehicles isn't the technology of them being available or working. It's really legislation at this point in the different states that either allow them or don't, and that's kind of what's holding it back. As an agency, we have advocated for just to really think about, in the development of these autonomous vehicles, or as they think about the advantages of them, that obviously that they include different types of technology that would assist people with disabilities, but also the affordability of them is the other big piece of it. It's great if we have the technology, but if it's $150,000 a vehicle and they come out, it's not going to be very helpful for folks. So I know those are things that people are taking in account. I know we're not quite there yet, but I think where there is kind of room for advocacy is right now is with legislation and getting rules and infrastructure in place that would allow these vehicles to be on the roads.
Well, that's just it, Nate. I think you're right, because there are two pending pieces of legislation within the State House that are looking at autonomous vehicles. Boston was just going a step further to just kind of stop the technology from even being utilized. So I'm just wondering again, if a hearing is, let's say, happens, which there already has been a hearing at the State House, is that something that employees of MCB could speak on and represent the agency, that this is a real, potentially a real boom for our, for the people that you serve? I just didn't know what you can and can't do in terms of advocacy and legislatively.
We can't lobby.
Yeah.
Okay.
You cannot lobby, and so it gets to a point when you're dealing with legislation, what is advocacy and what is actually lobbying? Because sometimes the agency just being there can be interpreted by some people as lobbying. We can inform, we can speak to individuals and inform them, but we cannot show that we are lobbying in a certain way, or endorsing a certain technology over another. It becomes rather tricky, and employees of the agency typically are not encouraged, are not able to do that.
Yeah, that was my next question.
All of us as executive staff have to sign different forms about lobbying. On a federal level, I have to sign forms keeping us away from lobbying certain issues on the federal level. But we can inform. So you can talk to a Congress or senator and inform them, but you can't come down on a certain side, or you can't be accompanied by a lobbyist and where the lobbyist has been retained to push a certain point of view. It can get very tricky
Right.
on how it goes. We were not aware of the meeting you're speaking about. City Hall hadn't reached out to us or didn't reach out to us.
Right.
We could have had an instructor, as the Carroll Center did have a mobility instructor go in and inform them.
Okay.
But Carroll Center being a private nonprofit, they don't have the restriction on the lobbying as we do as a state agency. So, but we can inform, and if we're asked certain questions, and we're asked that a lot by different legislators, we can ask and provide information.
Would the agency ever be open to like speaking with, or, you know, holding some kind of an event or an informative event with an autonomous vehicle company like Waymo?
So we've had, like Nate mentioned, we've spoken to all of these folks,
Okay.
and and we're kicking some topics around for ideas to holding those public meetings that we do on Zoom and focus on certain topics. So that may be a topic that and I know that they're coming to Boston soon, or they're trying to come in.
They're here mapping. They're
Right.
here mapping.
So
Yeah.
they're going to be in business soon. So and some blind individuals have taken rides in other cities that they're currently in.
Right.
And they operate in sort of a restricted area at this point in time. And so it is very helpful, and it is a technology that when it's there, it's going to be ideal for someone who can't drive. So that's one of the ideas. I'll have Justine and Nate take note of that, and we'll consider that going forward. Like I said, we spoke with several companies that were doing the technology, so we weren't favoring any one, and we were sort of just doing that study for informational purposes and understanding how it would work and how people who are blind would benefit from it. So as far as holding a meeting or a hearing, bringing a company in to talk about a certain service to our consumers, our clients, then that's not an issue because we're just trying to inform the public of the resources that may be out there in the community.
That's great. I will say, after the hearing, I mean, when the hearing first started, it almost seemed like a foregone conclusion that a particular this ordinance was going to pass. And I have to say that the disability community came out, and we had some really good speakers, both from Bay State and from NFB of MA, and as well as Best Buddies program. And the tone and the tenor of the city council members really seem to change. And we just saw an article that they're sending it back for more conversation, so they're not taking a vote. So I think we made a stand, and it might have made an impact. So but that's well, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
And that's great. You know, let me tell you something. The agency speaking to someone and 40 or 50 people showing up from the organizations for the blind or of the blind has a lot more impact. So the blind advocating for themselves, going in there as organizations of the blind and talking to the legislators, believe me, the weight is much more than the agency going in and talking in behalf of consumers who are blind.
Commissioner, let me ask you, this is Jonathan Gale again, and I'm not trying to cut you off, but I think this is a good point to ask a question about you're discussing, you know, issues at the State House, lobbying, etc. And I've discussed with other individuals who are part of this conversation right now today the potential, for example, of bringing together the chairs of the regional councils as a collective body to do, I don't want to use the word lobbying, so I'm going to use the word advocating on behalf of collective statewide issues for people who are visually impaired, whether it's to the State House, whether it's transportation, whether it's other pieces of legislation currently pending, as mentioned, potentially about transportation, or there's other legislation being proposed now with regard, for example, to property tax increases for persons or families who the head of household is visually impaired as well. What's the parameter, as opposed to quote unquote a staff person, as you said, of MCB speaking on behalf of, but what's the difference if advisory members do it? If somebody were to go and give testimony and identify themselves as Jonathan Gale, and I am totally blind, but also a member of the MCB Regional Advisory Council, is that acceptable, not acceptable? Do we continuously have to do that as individuals? And then I have another question after that, but I'd be curious what your thought is, because this, to me, this may be a way to have a workaround. You tell me. You tell us.
I'm gonna tell you that as an individual, yes, you can do whatever you'd like, but as an advisory council member, then I would have to refer you to have our attorney Lauren Lang weigh in on that. So I will bring that to her attention, and she'll have to research it, because you are representing the agency here advising us. So I don't know where that would go, because you're providing advice, but I wouldn't think that you're representing the agency's point of view, but some people might perceive that. I don't know.
I agree with that too.
So that's a legal question that someone's going to have to, and if it's that dicey, it depends how people interpret it. Like as soon as some people say Mass Commission for the Blind, all of a sudden there's some assumptions that are made right away. Whereas if you say Jonathan Gale, an individual in such a town, and I'm here to advocate for whatever, and this is what I need, and this is what, if you go in with organizations of the blind, then it's all of the blind there or represented by that organization speaking in their behalf. And when you go in as an advisory to the Commission for the Blind, then it's immediately perceived as a state government agency. So our attorney would, I'll refer that to her, and we can come up with an answer for you on next month.
And I would appreciate that, because we don't want to go in and identify ourselves if there's especially more than one person and we want to speak as a panel. We do not want to do it at the behest of MCB.
And you know how people are, they have selective hearing, and they would hear that you just saying Commission for the Blind, and then someone would say, oh, the Commission of Blind believes this, or said this. And that's where things get really confused, because then it becomes a messy situation. So I'll speak with her, and if she has a response, or we'll get it to you guys, or we'll bring it up at the next meeting for sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And your other question was?
The other question is a little bit different, but if the RACs, and this has come up as well, if the RACs want to look for resources to provide services to individuals within their region, for example, transportation, we've thought about approaching different organizations with small grant requests for transportation needs to get to meetings, to get to some of the different organizational groups that are being held, for example, sight loss vision groups, things like that, to help people get to those groups rather than always having to be distant or not able to participate. If we were to look for grants or anything like that for that to do it, I'll just use Lions Clubs, because we're all familiar with Lions Clubs, I think. And they were willing to write a grant for that, for X numbers of dollars or numbers of clubs. Is there a mechanism that would allow us to be able to do that or not? We're obviously not a nonprofit. We're not a not-for-profit, so we're not a C3 or a C4 at this point. Are we allowed to set ourselves up in that nature, or are we not? Or do we have to find a third-party surrogate group to be our financial, resource, if you will?
I've never heard of that being done, and the technical thing. So if you want to have the Lions Club apply for a grant,
No, we would be applying to an organization such as Lions. And if they were to grant, for example, $500 for transportation for the next year for people within certain towns, they would, if they're gonna provide the grant, they have to have a place to send a check. So the question is, are we allowed as an advisory council, I guess, are we allowed to set ourselves up as a C3 or a C4?
again, I would I would have to ask the attorney about that. But basically, it would be much easier and much simpler if the individuals applied to their local Lions Club and asked them, "Hey, I'm going to go to Boston. Can you help me out with $50 or $100, whatever they're asking for?" Then the check goes directly to the individual who's using the service, and no one else has to be the middle person handling checks. Who's going to write out the checks? Who takes the check? Let's say if we were to take the check, so we're going to have someone here writing checks, and we don't have that capability to, if to put the money in somewhere to write checks from. So
Well, I guess
it's a whole more
you're right.
complicated process than the Lions Club just issuing someone a check directly.
You're absolutely right, except that I wouldn't want to have Jonathan Gale have to go to the Lions Clubs 4 or 5 times for the year to get to different meetings, and each time have them do that.
Well, you can make the request one time and say, "This is for 4 meetings. Each meeting costs $100. Can you guys sponsor me for $400?"
We could, but then you get into, well, what if you have 6 people within, several towns around you who you're going to ask the Lions Club to support potentially? I guess the real question is whether or not are we allowed to separately, and obviously then you get into having to have a treasurer, et cetera, things like that. And there's a lot of legality that goes with it. So my real question is,
will.
are we even
I think it's
allowed?
an auditing nightmare as well on top of it. You're going down a wormhole here that could be really difficult.
Could be. I don't disagree. I was just trying to see if there was any direction that's out there.
Okay, I will check with Lauren and see what she says. But it will be, everything has to be balanced and reconciled, and
Absolutely.
it could be way more cumbersome than any agency would do, especially since the treasurer, people would not be state workers. You'd have to have access to an account. You'd have to open an account somewhere under someone's name. I don't know. It sounds like quite a bit of
It could be a very slippery slope, and I would agree.
paperwork. So I will ask, and we'll find out.
Thank you.
Good conversations, good discussions. Anybody else? We have 7 minutes.
Brian, this is Debbie. I did have a question. Do you think it's possible on the website for MCB to have a little legislative corner that would indicate to the consumers what kind of things are up at the State House or pending or that pertain specifically to the blind issues? Because I've been trying to figure out some of this stuff.
So that would be a perfect place for the consumer groups to advocate for and get feedback from that.
Right.
I
So
guess
you have
we
to
could.
get a member of a consumer group, because I'm not, and I kind of just go to the website and.
Right, but if the Bay State Council or National Federation of the Blind Massachusetts had a legislative corner, and they already have legislative representatives on both of those organizations that deal with law, advocating for certain things up there. So they're aware of the bills that are out there related to blindness. Not that we're not, but we don't have we have a legislative liaison, but it's sort of just to keep in contact with someone that the legislators can reach out to for information purposes. So we may or may not have all of that. We probably do. I don't know. Let me again, that's another duty that we'd have to put onto someone here, and we don't have anyone employed as that could be researching that area. but let's see what we can find. But that's another great opportunity for the local consumer groups to be aware of, and they already have people that are sort of watching different legislation pertaining to the blind, and so I'm not even sure if they have that, but I know they have individuals that are tasked with that within the organization. So,
John, this is Nona. So I am the co-chair of the advocacy committee for
there
the
you
Bay
go.
State Council of the Blind. So
There you go.
we're constantly sending out information on our
Okay.
on our list. But I would be happy to, like, I mean, if we could put something together that could be on MCB, that would let people know what's happening. I'm sure that's something that the Bay State would work with MCB on, if they're interested. But we certainly, that's what we do.
Okay. All right. So Debbie, you know where to watch for releases. You gotta get on an email
Right.
list. You don't have to be a
Yeah, exactly.
member. I
I
don't
was
think you have to be a member. You can just join the email lists and maybe
Yeah.
get information.
But maybe that would be, because I look at MCB as my one-stop shopping, and
Oh, okay. Well, we like that concept.
and a lot of people don't even know about advocacy groups. They know MCB. That's where we kind of get
All
direct.
right.
That's very
So
true.
it just seems like it would be nice somewhere on your pages that things that directly affect us and are places, if I want to call my senator or my representative, that I get alerted somehow that there's something up there that really
Yeah, but
concerns me.
but some people might perceive that we're posting those legislative things, and we're encouraging, so that might be that we're lobbying for certain things.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, I understand the conflict. I just
Yeah.
was curious as to if maybe
Uh,
you
John,
direct-
is there something on the website that could be put on to say for more information and provide contact information about both Bay State as well as NFB of MA, for people who maybe don't know about, like Debbie is saying, advocacy organizations?
I guess we could.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way to do it as a calendar of events that's very, safe or something like that. And it could be,
This is
you know,
Jonathan. I think even if you were simply to make it very simple, to learn more about
Right.
such and such link, MCB link.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So everything we post up there has to be clear anyway. So
yeah.
it's not, we just can go ahead and create a page. There's discussions that have to occur with other entities that outside of MCB to see if that can be done. But all right, we'll
I think it's a good
check
request.
it out.
Yeah.
We'll check it out. I mean, I have no problem with any of this myself, but I as the agency, we have to make sure that we do what we do. All right.
Anybody else? We have 2 minutes. Good meeting, everybody. Thank you very much. We're December 2nd, right after Thanksgiving long weekend and Giving Tuesday as well.
All right.
See you all then. Thank you.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Thank you,
Everybody,
everybody.
thank you.